Good evening. The date is July 14, 1945. Germany has surrendered and war in Europe has come to an end. Hitler's Nazis have been vanquished and American soldiers are returning home. Families and friends everywhere from California, Iowa to New York are welcoming back their men and women after 3 long years of furious war. In a cottage on the quiet shores of Walloon Lake, Michigan, await Mariam, the young wife of First Lieutenant Morgan Jablonski, who was listed missing in action after the invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. This is her story and revelation that soon comes to her door. As the lights rise, Harriet's sitting at the dining room table. Are you up, dear? Yes. Do you mind sitting with me for a few minutes? I thought I'd get up early so we could talk a bit before you leave. I always love this time of morning. It's when my thoughts are most clear. It was the same for your grandpa. He was always up before the first bird sang. I don't mean to rush you, son, but are you going to be much longer? No, Mother. That's good. That's good to hear, son. We both know I'm a nag at times, but it's always for a good cause. You can't fault me for that, can you? There's nothing wrong for a mother caring for her son. Pastor Dupree once told me I meddled in your life too much. But I set him straight, all right. I convinced him I was only doing a mother's duty, and there's no sin in that. What's going on in there, son? Aren't you ready yet? I'm busy at the moment, Mother. I promise not to keep you. Can it wait until we get down to the station? But we may not have a chance to talk later. Can't you spare me a few minutes, son? Morgan crosses into the dining room. What is it? Here, sit next to me. You've got to promise it'll be quick. I've got a war to catch and the army doesn't take kindly to tardiness. I thought we should talk because you never know what can happen. You understand, don't you, son? Yes. What is it? I've held something back from you all these years that I think you ought to know. And what's that? It's difficult for me to say, but it has to do with your father. Do we have to talk about that now? I really know the whole story. No, you don't. Not the whole story. It didn't happen the way you were first told. When your father left us, it didn't happen the way I said. He never drowned in the river, and he never abandoned you, son. What are you saying? You were 5 years old and too young to understand. Your father and I disagreed about everything, and with this drinking and running around, it made him crazy at times. He had a terrible temper, and one day he took it too far. I screamed and fought him off the best I could. My father found me bloody with my clothes torn and hardly recognized me. Later he told me he found your father at a bar, dragged him outside, and then he just ran off. We never saw him again, and I never questioned my father. It wasn't until he was dying in the hospital that he grabbed my hand and told me about that day. He said, he took your father into the woods, down by a narrow creek, held a shotgun to his temple, saying, if you ever set foot in these parts again, or try to contact my daughter or grandson, I promise you, I'll hunt you down like a miserable dog and kill you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, son. I meant to tell you, but the right time never came. And now with you going off to war, I thought you needed to know. If anything were to happen to you, I couldn't live with myself. I guess you're man enough to hear it now. Man enough? Why now? After all these years? I'm sorry, son. It was hard for both of us. He was a bad man and nothing could be done about it. We're not talking about you, Mother. It's not about you, but me and him. He may have been a bad man, but he was my father. Grandpa had no right chasing him off like a mad dog. He had his reasons and was always right. Forgive me, but it wasn't my fault. Whose fault? Was it then mine? No, it was never your fault. I've got to get ready. I don't know what to say to you. You should have told me, Mother. What else have you kept from me? Nothing. I promise you. Don't hold it against me for telling you the truth, son. Today, I'm leaving like Father, and I too may never come home. I would rather believed a lie. The lights suddenly go black as Mariam's voice is still heard, while Black Harriet exits unnoticed, with Mabel returning to her seat. The lights slowly rise as she continues to speak.
He didn't look at her on the drive to the train station. I could see the hurt on her face, but she pretended nothing was ever said between them.
That's quite a story, but if she gets any worse, you know where to come. I've got to run. Can you help me to my car?
Sure.
You know, if I were 5 years younger, I'd convince that young man into taking me for a long, rocky boat ride with no port in sight.
Mabel, as if I want to hear that.
Oh, he's a real looker, don't you think?
I don't know what you're saying.
You're not fooling me. I saw how your face flushed when he took your hand.
He squeezed my hand too tightly. It hurt.
Or was it something more personal?
Mabel, take him on your boat ride for all I care. I'm not the least bit interested, honest.
Oh, I may stop by tomorrow. I just love seeing men sweat, don't you?
Mabel, please. Aren't you afraid of others hearing you?
No, why should I be?
You're impossible.
No, I'm delightful. Mariam and Mabel exit upstage. It's the following morning with Sebastian entering the kitchen, dressed in overalls, as the lights slowly rise.
Good morning, Sebastian. She's still sleeping.
Well, I hope she gets some rest then. I wanted to tell her I forgot the knell, so we'll be starting a little later than planned. It's hot as the Arabian desert. Oh, do you have anything cold to drink?
There's some fresh apple juice. Sit down, and I'll bring you some. Will Richard be wanting any?
Mariam crosses to the cold box, pulling out a pitcher of juice. He's counting shingles and stacking them on a pallet at the moment. He's a fine young man and a good worker. His father's a lucky man to have such a son.
Where did he say he's going?
Minnesota. He's going to help work his father's farm. I've never been to Minnesota, but I hear it's nice. Have you ever been there?
No, but I've heard it's a lot like here.
I imagine so.
What's he like?
He's fairly quiet and well-mannered, and he doesn't talk much, but I like him though. He's attentive and strikes me as a reasonably intelligent and fair-minded young man. Why do you ask?
No particular reason. It's not often we share company with a stranger.
I understand. It was a stroke of luck and the will of God that brought him to my door. It was late, just before I settled in for the night, when I heard someone knocking. His first question was whether a Mrs. Jablonski lived in the town. He said he knew her son, so that was that.
He doesn't know him very well, though, does he?
Apparently not.
It's odd, don't you think?
I like to think he's a messenger sent from above to give us hope. Morgan's all right.
I suppose so.
Listen, Mariam, since we're sitting together, I'm curious about something. After last night, it worries me about Harriet. I know things have been rough between you two. To be honest, she's shared things with me that have deeply upset her. And one thing in particular was the day you told her Morgan wouldn't be coming home. Why would you say such a thing?
I didn't mean to hurt her.
I'm sure you didn't. But saying something like that only brings pain.
And it pains me to hear her going on like he'll be stepping through our front door at any second.
She's just trying to keep a bright outlook, that's all.
I knew the day he left he'd never be coming home.
Now, how would you know that?
I knew the day he'd left he'd never be coming home.
Now, how would you know that?
I just knew. God shows us things, doesn't he?
That he does. But there are times we just have to have faith. We have to hope for the best. Even in our darkest hour, we can't allow ourselves to faint. That's what Harriet's trying not to do. Can you see that, Mariam?
Yes, I can. It was such a beautiful morning. Morgan had come home on leave. He was so handsome and had a sparkle of pride in his eyes that I hadn't seen for a very long time. At last his life felt part of a larger thing than himself, and he was leaving behind a past that made him feel lesser of a man. You should have seen him standing there, all tall and proud.
The stage goes to black.